Hello and welcome back to the East Carolina Law Group. I'm attorney Tim Koller, the principal attorney at law here. And thank you for tuning into our self-help series. So this video in the self-help series is actually going to be about family law and divorce. And unfortunately, this is one of the hottest areas of law that we practice here. It's one of our biggest, one of our biggest draws for folks is family and divorce. And generally speaking, understanding what encompasses a family law case, because many times, people will come in and say, well, I don't have a family law case, I have a custody case. So understanding first what falls into a case involving family law is what we want to make sure that our viewers are aware of. So the types of cases that are family law cases are anything that involves the family, which kind of like the name says, but specifically are cases of separation, divorce, child custody, equitable distribution or division of marital property, cases involving alimony or post-separation support, anything involving Department of Social Services such as adult protective services or child protective services, domestic violence protective orders, and that sort of thing. Those are all things that encompass the realm of family law. So now that we understand those things fall within family law, specifically what creates a situation where you have a case that would be in family law. Let's say you're a non-traditional family, such as you lived with a particular person for a number of years, you have several children together, maybe you bought a house together. Would that be a family law case? Some of it would be. Some of it would fall into what we call a palimony case. Generally speaking, a lot of folks that we talk to in these situations would say, well, I didn't get married because I had been married once before and it was so hard and expensive and painful to get out of, and I said, I'm not going to get married, that's why I'm so smart. And actually, you're not very smart, because it's much harder to divide up property if you're not married than if you were. Additionally, if you have children involved in that, people think, well, if I'm not married, then she has no rights, or whatever the case may be. And this is absolutely false as well. The rights of parentage are protected by the Constitution, regardless of marriage. So, understanding what creates a valid marriage is our first thing we need to talk about. First of all, in the state of North Carolina, you have to be of age. You have to obtain a valid and legal marriage license. You have to have a solemnization, which means you have to have a ceremony, and then you have to sign and file the marriage license. That would create a valid marriage. Now, there are certain situations where there would be an invalid marriage, and those are basically covered in an acronym we call BIN. It would be bigamy, incest, or non-age. Those things are invalid marriages in North Carolina. Now, there are certain circumstances where that would create a void marriage, or a marriage that is void ab initio. At the time of the making, the marriage is void. But there are certain things that are voidable. These are situations where you would have an annulment of a marriage versus a divorce. Now, voidable marriages are only to be exercised by the non-offending party, and they could be such as incurable insanity. They could be such as impotence. They could also be situations of one party has a child born within 6 months of the marriage, not known to the other party. These are all situations where the party exercising the voidability has to be the innocent party and could not have known of the conditions at the time the marriage was made. For example, let's say that a lady is engaged to marry a man, and a few months before the wedding, the man has relations with another woman. She becomes pregnant and has a child within 6 months of the marriage. Now, the wife has no knowledge of this and doesn't learn until after the fact. She could then exercise a voidable clause under the statute and use an annulment as a mechanism to dissolve the marriage. But let's say he comes clean and says, hey, I spent the night with this woman, I was intoxicated, I'm sorry, and she forgives him. And even if he doesn't particularly know that that woman becomes pregnant, she was aware of the affair ahead of time, and chances are she would not be able to exercise the birth of that subsequent child as a way of getting the marriage annulled. Annulments are exceedingly rare. So just to illustrate that as a point, one of the misnomers about annulment is that you have to do it really quickly after the marriage is done and you can get it annulled if it hasn't been very long, or if the marriage was never consummated. None of those things are conditions upon which annulment would be granted. Generally, it would be a divorce. So what makes a divorce? Well, in North Carolina, there are two types of divorce. First, there's a divorce from bed and board. Now, divorce from bed and board can be called for at any time. You can file a complaint, and you can even bring other claims such as equitable distribution, alimony, and that sort of thing. You don't have to be separated for any particular length of time. And there are various grounds for the divorce from bed and board, which is effectively a judicial separation. It's a court order that says you are now separated based on marital misconduct. And that marital misconduct can be abandonment, indignities, adultery, cruel and barbarous treatment, malicious turning out of doors, and excessive user of drugs and alcohol. Those are all factors that can be used for a fault-based divorce from bed and board. And once that divorce from bed and board is entered, then it becomes a judicial separation. And once you've been separated physically for 1 year, you may then apply to the court for an absolute divorce. Now, what's important to remember about an absolute divorce is this. You must be physically separated for a period of 1 year. You may not, repeat, you may not reside under the same roof in the same home and live in separate rooms and consider that separation. That does not fly in North Carolina. Other states it does, not here. You must physically separate. One live at one residence and one live at the other, and you may not resume the marital relationship for a period of 1 year. And then once that period of 1 year is up, at the time of separation, it must be the intent of one of the parties for the separation to be permanent. And then they apply for divorce, and then you will be divorced. Now, this also doesn't mean that there wouldn't be other claims, and we're going to talk about that in the next video. But I want to put this out in one way. One of the things that I think makes us unique, and again, if you watched our introductory video, we're not your granddaddy's lawyers. And one of the things that we do much differently here is I actually try to talk people out of divorcing. And I actually try to talk people out of, if they're dead set on divorce, from basically going in and starting a war. And the final video that I'm going to produce in this series is going to be about not going to war. The one thing I want to point out is that many times people will come in and they'll say, I've been married to this person and it's just not working out and we need to get divorced. And a lot of times I'll try to work with them and ask them why, and I'll try to talk them out of it if at all possible, or try to refer them to marriage counseling. We used to have a saying when I was in the military called cheaper to keep her. You know, cheaper to keep her, cheaper to keep him. It really is, but at the end of the day, there was something that you loved about that person, which is why you got married to begin with. And that thing is worth fighting for. And if both parties are willing to put in at least some minimal effort, sometimes those marriages can be saved. And we'd prefer to do that at all costs. And the law would prefer that. The law in North Carolina does not want to make divorce easy. They want to preserve the family, preserve the sanctity of marriage, and they want to preserve the family wherever possible. And even though divorce has become extremely commonplace in our country, it's really not advisable. But if you are in a situation where you feel that there's no other alternative, don't try to do it on your own. Come and see us. Thank you for tuning into the East Carolina Law Group, where your family is our priority. You can find us on the web at www.eastcarolinalaw.com. You can find us on our Facebook page at the East Carolina Law Group. You can also call us at 252-453-2273. And if you want to find more videos and keep updated on when we put some more of these kind of things up for some more self-help kind of information, you can do so by subscribing to our YouTube channel by clicking on the link right about here. It's there. Down. Yes, right there. Subscribe by clicking our link. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you found this informative, and have a great day.